All right, the little button here says that we are now live streaming and recording, which makes this Up North News Radio for this Tuesday, April 2nd. I'm Pat Kreitlow, back here in Chippewa Falls after an extended weekend with big thanks to Greg and Kristen and everybody for filling in while I could get a little time off with some grandkids. So, coming up today, we're going to tell you about a winter storm warning that's in effect for a big chunk of northeast Wisconsin, that place where Donald Trump is supposed to fly in later today and have a rally in the Green Bay area. We'll see if that's going to happen or not. We'll talk more about the spring elections, spring in quotes, I guess, today. Spring elections that take place today. Very important for school districts and a couple of state constitutional amendments to tell you about. In our second hour, we're going to look at the possibility of some bipartisan movement on immigration reform, especially as it relates to migrant workers on dairy farms in places like Wisconsin. We'll talk to Hans Breitenmoser about that. And I believe we're going to get a drop in from Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, who's going to remind us about the importance of getting out and voting today. So that and so much more still ahead. Christina Laurie has the uplift in our first hour. Some interesting stories about interesting people from our daily newsletter. So stick around. The radio show gets started about 4 minutes from now at 6:06 across the Civic Media Radio Network. And here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
And he's telling the truth this time. Good morning. Hey there, Wisconsin. Nice to have you here. A beautiful day up north, live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, 6:06 on this Tuesday, April 2nd. And whether you're listening on the radio, through the app, social media, or podcast, thanks for taking us along on your Tuesday morning. Got a question for you. Do you understand now why I urge so many people to vote early, in person or by absentee ballot? Because there is a winter storm warning for a big chunk of northeast Wisconsin today. So a lot of folks are going to alter their plans to vote, and maybe not go to a Donald Trump rally later today that's supposed to be held in Green Bay. But again, a nasty winter storm is hitting that area. So it's why folks like me tend to get that absentee voting done earlier, because you just never know what kinds of things are going to happen on Election Day. Or there could be the Brewers home opener, and people will be going to that as well. I'm going to talk to one of them in just a second, but first a reminder that if you want to reach the show while we're here from 6 to 8 every weekday morning, our number is 855-75-CIVIC. Again, 855-75-CIVIC. We would love to have you join us at any point throughout the course of the day. It's Tuesday, so here in our first hour, we will visit with Christina Laurie, who puts together the daily newsletter for Up North News. So we'll hear some of the stories that she has been working on. We'll talk more about today's elections across Wisconsin. There's a presidential primary, there are local races, there's a couple of statewide issues that voters are weighing in on. We may be hearing in our second hour from Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez talking about the importance of voting. Also, with this being Tuesday, we tend to visit with our friend Hans Breitenmoser, a dairy farmer from the Merrill area. And this week, we're going to be talking about the progress that's being made, minor progress, but progress still the same, on reforming agricultural visas, which would be a game changer for the migrant farm workers who are keeping Wisconsin's dairy industry healthy. So we'll see if that is some kind of false hope, or if there really is some kind of bipartisan movement on the horizon. So that, and Chad Holmes will be here too, of course, because it's Tuesday, and much more coming up along the way. Let me tell you right now about the winter storm warning, just the latest on it. The counties impacted are Marinette, Menominee, Oconto, Dorr, Shawano, Wapaka, Outagamie, Brown, Kewanee, Waushara, Winnebago, Calumet, and Manitowoc. And that includes the cities of Green Bay, Wapaka, Appleton, Shawano, Needham, and Asha. That winter storm warning goes into effect at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and it will be in effect for 24 hours till 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. Expect some heavy snow, total accumulations between 8 and 12 inches, depending on the area. Some places in far northeast Wisconsin might get 14 inches or more. There will be lighter accumulations closer to the Lake Michigan shoreline, but then there's the winds. Everybody in Wisconsin is going to feel that today. Winds in that winter storm area gusting as high as 45 miles an hour, causing blowing and drifting snow tonight into tomorrow. For many other adjacent counties, there's a winter weather advisory, including Sauk, Dane, Jefferson, Dodge, Washington, and Sheboygan counties, where you'll have rain this morning, changing over to wet, heavy snow a little bit later on. So use all the caution necessary, and that includes folks who might have to head out to American Family Field for an unspring-like home opener. But we got a roof, which is more than I can say for some other teams' Mets. Here are 6 a.m. temperatures right now. It's 37 here in Chippewa Falls. Hayward comes in at 30 degrees. Park Falls 32, Wausau 34. Green Bay reporting 38 degrees. La Crosse is at 35. Wisconsin Rapids 33. Oshkosh 37. It's 38 in Madison, and it's 34 in Waukesha. where we find in his bright blue City Connect jersey that says Brew Crew on it, one Greg Bach getting set to attend today's home opener for the Brewers versus the Twins. What a fan you are. Look at that. 2 different Brewer shirts and a Brewer cap. The man's ready for a game today.
Pat, I just need you to do me one favor today.
Yes.
Take me out to that ball game.
Take you out to the crowd?
Yeah, buy me some peanuts. Not some Cracker Jacks. They get stuck in my teeth.
Yeah, don't do that. No.
Their prizes suck.
Always have. So you got the jersey, you've got the T-shirt, You've got the hat. Do you have the snow boots? Do you have a snow brush for the car? Because Brewers home openers back in the county stadium days, some of those were real character builders, in terms of the conditions.
Even if you were a 4-year-old girl, you were taught how to be a man. Well, luckily, I believe that the weather down here, we're supposed to get some snow later on in the evening down by where I live in Kenosha. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to be getting rain and wind. But either way, like you said, we got a roof, baby. I ain't got problems.
No. While I was away in Idaho for the weekend visiting a daughter and some grandsons, took note of the Brewers being able to sweep the Mets, but only after that rain out, for what was supposed to be the first day, because again, some places haven't figured out that you can build these things and not have to worry about the climate. So we'll be all right over it. I almost fell into the Miller Park thing again today. It's how many years has it been American Family Field? Man,
2.
Whatever it is, I'm always in danger of slipping back into it. But it's just, I can hear it in your voice. You can hear it in my voice. We're always a little giddy when the home opener comes, and it's finally time to tune in for some Brewers baseball. The game against the Twins, the broadcast begins at 2:35 this afternoon. And you can hear the Brewers on News from the Center in Richland Center, WRJN in Racine, Oshkosh Air Support, and 98Q Country in Park Falls. So are you a home opener aficionado, or did this just time out well that you could get tickets?
It timed out well. I haven't been to a home opener since 2018 or 19. Okay. So it's good to be back. And there are some there's actually one mitigating factor. I mean, usually I'm able to, if I can, I'll take the day off or a half a day. But there's always one mitigating factor that keeps me far, far away from a Brewers home opener that I just don't need in my life. And that is if we play the Cubs.
Oh yeah. It's not worth
I don't want to go there. I don't want to be around those individuals. They're unwell.
And now a little cocky because we stole your manager, and
Did you see that video of them coming out to their big
the pyrotechnics?
It's like, they stole fireworks for a 4-year-old. Cool deal.
Goodness, they stopped at one of those roadside stands and got buy 2 and get 5 free because there's such cheapy pyrotechnics that greeted the Cubs as they came onto the field yesterday. So I like our odds better. And I can't wait to hear from you tomorrow about things like the big honkin' score video board and everything else there. So hopefully it's a lot of fun. Thank you very much for joining up with Kristen Lyerly yesterday and again on Friday, filling in. Thanks to some of the guests that we pre-recorded segments with Selena Heller, Deborah Cronmiller, Kyle Tharp, Dan Schumacher, Mark Jacob. Thanks to all of them for helping us make sure that we could have some full shows there on Friday and Monday instead of, complete and total reruns and let me get out to Idaho where, it's always nice to see the mountains. We were in Idaho Falls, and so all the mountains are within sight. They're snow capped, very lovely. But we didn't have winter weather at all. That's the best way to see snow in the mountains is when it's snowing up on the top, but now where you are. And it's very lovely there.
Look at that far away, way, way far away snow.
Yes, I can handle that. And of course, you transfer always through the airport in Denver, and anybody who's flown into Denver knows that you land first in something like Jackson, Wyoming, and then the plane drives for about an hour to get to the terminal. And so between that, the late flights that we chose, we got back about a little over 3 hours ago here, but
No.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there might be some snoring and drooling here along Lake Wissota coming up 2 hours from now. But we were able to make a full weekend of it. See the kids, see the grandkids. I feel a little off, and it's not so much the late night. I feel very stiff and sore in places. And it occurred to me that we took the boys bowling yesterday. So apparently I accidentally exposed myself to a degree of something called exercise. And so
Well,
as
at
a
least you didn't
result,
expose yourself.
no, just to the notion of exercise. I'm feeling something that feels like I did something other than sit behind a desk all day. And again,
That happened to me yesterday. Sunday, I put together furniture, and the next day I'm like, did I go for a run?
No. Sometimes it's just we're a little on the sedentary side, and
Yeah.
anything is liable to make you say, "Wow, I feel like an Olympic athlete." I did take a photo of the scoreboard after the second frame because I opened the second game with 2 strikes in the first and second frames. And I took a picture right then and there because I knew that was a total accident that managed to happen.
I'm gonna start calling you Pat Strikelow.
Hey, I like that. Okay, so yeah, we had a really good time. So it was good too, even though it involved a little moderate amount of exercise here. Hey, in terms of the election, if you are getting out there today and you need to know more about what's on your ballot or where to vote locally or your registration status, head over to myvote.wi.gov. That's the website for the Wisconsin Elections Commission. It is a great site, makes it easy to see if you're registered, how to get registered, where to vote, and what all is on your ballot. Again, myvote.wi.gov. And again, you can register at the polls as well today, but remember to bring ID, not just ID like a driver's license, but if you're registering to vote, bring something that proves your residency, like a utility bill, something that has your name and address on there. There are some constitutional amendments on the ballot that deserve a no vote because they're nothing more than Republican mischief with trying to make it tougher for local governments to administer elections. And as we mentioned, former President Trump is planning to come to Green Bay later today. But again, there is that winter storm warning, so we'll see how that shakes out with things. And new this morning, the Biden campaign announces that President Biden will be flying to Wisconsin next Monday to talk about economic issues. We'll unpack more of the news coming up in just a bit, but first to tell you, wherever you're listening around Wisconsin on this Tuesday morning, when you're here, you're up north, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. You're going to hear a lot of Fleetwood Mac today because of a landmark album that marks its anniversary today. Details in our history lesson coming up in about a half hour. There is a presidential primary today, but of course it has very little significance since both President Biden and former President Trump have locked up the nominations of their respective parties. You never know with each campaign with each election cycle as it comes in. There have been years where the Wisconsin presidential primary was extremely noteworthy. I think a lot of folks would forget that 8 years ago today, when again there was a wide open presidential race because it was the end of President Obama's second term, so you had wide open races there, and it was Ted Cruz, if memory serves right, who won the primary here, not Donald Trump. Since that time, a whole lot of folks on the Republican side of the ledger who said they could never support Donald Trump, not only support him, but support a lot of what he has said and done, no matter how many times it's proven to be false, wrong, or, hostile toward democracy. So he'll do all right today. There will be people voting, basically an uncommitted slate for today. But what I'm really going to be looking for, and it may be nothing, but I'll be curious to see Republican voters who show up today because they want to vote in their school board elections. There might be school referendums. There's those constitutional questions, things like that. Will they still vote for Trump as well? For all the talk about people on the Democratic side voting, uncommitted to make a statement about what's happening in the Middle East, I'm actually going to be looking at Nikki Haley's number. I'm curious. I'm not making any kind of prediction, but as I was looking through the ballot and everything, I thought, I wonder how many folks on the Republican side are going to say, nope. I'm going to put my, check mark next to Nikki Haley's name or one of the other names. There's something like 6 Republican candidates on the ballot. So we'll be watching how that happens. And then we'll count up the votes, and then we'll do it all over again on August 13th and then again on November 5th. For the fall cycle, for the partisan elections, for Congress, for U.S. Senate, for legislature, for president. Again, the general election is November 5th. The primary for that, for legislature, Congress, things like that, will be August 13th. And again, that's not a date that most people are looking at and circling on their calendar to go vote. So again, this would be a good time to get signed up to have absentee ballots sent to you prior to each of these elections so that you can vote ahead of time and mail it back in or vote in person at your local clerk's office and cast that vote for the August primary and the November general election. There are something like 91 different school referendums out there. The biggest one is in the Milwaukee Public Schools District. We'll be talking about that tomorrow with a guest in our weekly homeroom segment. I do have to pass along, though, that there was a comment from one Republican state senator in the suburbs, Chris Kapenga of Delafield, put up a post yesterday that said the $252 million MPS referendum for Milwaukee is a great illustration of progressive liberals' approach to education and fiscal responsibility. 1, withdraw as much money as possible from Wisconsinites' paychecks. 2, dish it out to union leadership under the guise of education. And 3, take no accountability for plummeting student achievement. And I really want to tip my cap to the folks who responded to it, noting, for example, that Republicans have controlled the legislature for the better part of 2 different decades. Any failure is on them. One person goes by the name Captain Wisconsin, said, "Aren't you guys in the midst of a 10-month paid vacation? Sounds like you have work to do," with a little clown face emoji. Another posted, "I can think of dozens of Wisconsin schools that could use an extra $2 million, but you chose to give $2 million to Michael Gableman for a wild goose chase." GB3 writes, "I've gone to some of your, quote, listening sessions where you don't listen at all. People have begged you to help address the state education funding formula, and you said, I prefer that voters choose through referendums, and now you're attacking those referendums." So it's good that people are calling out certain legislators, for their doublespeak when it comes to their lack of support and outright hostility toward public education in Wisconsin. There is, as well, as I mentioned, the constitutional amendments. The one targets what conservatives like to call Zuckerbucks and try to ban private money. Again, the solution to that is to adequately fund local governments so that they don't have to go looking for private money to hold elections that are well organized and safe and accurate. And much like the state isn't doing its share in helping fund education, which is why there's so many referendums there, they're not doing their share of helping pay for elections across Wisconsin, which is what is leading local governments to seek out, some of these private grants. The other question deals with, who can work on elections. And basically, if you read it literally, it means that nobody who isn't a direct hire in a clerk's office can work on an election, which opens up a real Pandora's box given the amount of volunteers that go into putting on an election and the occasional experts and consultants who come in and help with new systems and things like that. In both cases, these could have been bills. These are bills that would have been vetoed by the governor, of course, because they're unnecessary. But Republicans thought they would then just bypass the governor and go directly down the constitutional route. But in doing so, you, again, risk continuing to politicize the state constitution. And it's, again, something that's not necessary and deserves, no votes on there. Yesterday, and especially the day before on Sunday, on Easter, there was so much misinformation out there about the fact that the Easter holiday was also the same day as the National Transgender Day of Visibility, and people accusing the Biden administration of blatantly making Easter the same day as Transgender Visibility Day. And again, folks either had to be the people making those hateful remarks were either disingenuous or ignorant or willingly lying to supporters, because Easter is on different dates every year. It has to do with when a certain moon comes up and the number of days before that. Easter changes dates all the time. Transgender Day of Visibility is always on March 31st, has been for many years. So this is what's called a coincidence. But the fact that people wanted to try to make something out of it, to basically put out some very hateful speech about, our transgender friends and neighbors, that really helped expose a lot of them for, what's inside of them, even as they were going to their Easter services. And then they took it a step further, saying that the White House Easter egg roll, which was taking place yesterday, that the rules there, banned any kind of religious symbols on the eggs and on the decorations. But again, those rules have been in place for years and years, for multiple administrations, Republican as well as Democratic. And it is just a reminder again that we have a right-wing media ecosystem that will lie or be willfully ignorant in order to advance a cause, rather than just being straight up honest with their viewers, with their listeners. There's a lot to say that you don't have to make up things to make your point. When you do, you're making a point, but it's not the point that you think you're making. Pam Yonkie's Midwest Farm Report is coming up next, followed by Christina Laurie and The Uplift. This is Up North News Radio for a Tuesday morning.
Just think what tomorrow will do. Don't stop.
Welcome back and welcome to The Uplift, our chance to find out some of the stories that you could be getting if you get our daily newsletter. Head over to upnorthnewswi.com, click on newsletter in the top banner, and become our latest subscriber to material that is assembled daily by Christina Laurie, who visits us every week to talk about some of those stories. Christina, good morning.
Good morning, Pat. Thanks for having me back.
You bet. Let's talk about three different stories that people could have been reading in our newsletter under the headline of what, weird Wisconsin, shall we say? So we're going to get away from the hard news, and we're not even going to do a lot of food stuff this time around necessarily. But unusual people, unusual places. Let's put it that way. Does that sound fair?
Sure. Yeah, that's what we'll group all of these under.
There you go. So there was the story that folks might have heard me tease this in the newsletter several days back, but a Wisconsin woman who joins a very rare club when it comes to donating organs. Tell us about her story.
Yes. So, I mean, it's really the gift of a lifetime if you donate one organ one time. But a woman up in Appleton joined the rare club of donating 2 organs, of course, as a living donor. A lot of people will mark on their driver's license that they'll donate upon death. But a woman by the name of Joy Shoemaker donated, she's one of less than 100 living donors, who've donated both a kidney and part of their liver. So she gave a kidney 20 years ago to her sister, and then she recently gave part of her liver in another donation. The liver, it's interesting because it's the only organ in the body that can regenerate lost tissue in about 6 weeks. So it's less invasive, if you want to put it that way, as compared to donating a kidney. But again, it's really just the gift of a lifetime. And we're lucky to have so many good people doing good things here in Wisconsin. And it's also a great reminder to double check that you are marked down as you're an organ donor on your driver's license. It's a big myth. I've seen it's one of the downsides of TikTok. I've seen a trend going around where people were trying to say that if you mark that on your driver's license, the paramedics are less likely to try and resuscitate you. And that is not true. So we just want to dispel that.
Good.
Please know that that's not going to happen, and make sure that you're.
Oh, this is a terrible accident scene. Quick, check that man's wallet. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way, folks. So, but the whole thing about donating part of your liver, I think I'd heard that once before, sometime back, but that's still, you rarely hear about that. And again, just what a mystical, almost magical thing it is that that we have things that can, to a degree, regenerate and help other people. It's just very cool.
And as part of the donation process, when they say part of your liver, she donated 70% of her liver.
Ooh.
So that's a giant chunk that completely has already regenerated. She donated it in June of 21.
Wow. Good on her. That's a great message for all of us, that we could do more in providing gifts even after we're gone, or as a living donor. All right, let's talk about now that we've gone from a unique woman when it comes to organ donation to a unique man when it comes to getting provisions for himself. Somebody in the Driftless area, I believe.
Yes. So you remember that time not that long ago when everyone wanted to completely avoid the grocery store or limit trips 4 years ago,
yes.
when everything shut down? Well, a man from the Driftless region decided to keep that going. He was avoiding the grocery store. He hit the year mark. Then he hit the 2-year mark. Now he's going on 4 years and counting, where Bill Robichaud has not gone to a grocery store. He forages. He also lives, again, in the Driftless region. So he has access to a lot of local farmers, and he can just make deals directly with them. So I know this isn't possible for people who are listening to this from a major city. But it's just a cool endeavor that he decided to keep up on. So the main takeaway that I got from this is that a grocery store isn't necessarily a source of food, it's just a middleman. So, especially as we go into farmers market season, you can get a ton of stuff directly from the producers, and then you're making more of a personal connection with them, as well as a more straightforward economic impact, giving the money straight to them instead of having to, deal with the middleman of grocery stores. And then also, it's just a good reminder that if you don't live near a farm in a rural area, many Wisconsin farmers offer CSA programs, that's community supported agriculture. And now is the time to sign up. We're kind of nearing the end of that window. A lot of them are already filled up, but you can get a box of fresh produce shipped straight to you, or you can go to like a mutual third party pickup location, and you can select how frequently you want that to happen. So whether you want it once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, or if you want to share that box with a couple neighbors and all go in on it together, that's another great alternative and a great choice for people who want to just cut down on their grocery bills or the number of times they're going grocery shopping.
It's just so old school, to again get your provisions without having to go someplace that has is filled with people, filled with processed food. Of course, the checkout registers. Although I do wonder how he's gotten by all these years without somebody offering him like free samples of like frozen pizza or whatever's on special with the sample ladies. Do you do a lot of the free samples when you're grocery shopping?
Um, Only at Costco. The ones somehow at other stores, they just always seem germier to me. It's like a more confined space. Costco just has those high ceilings. They have
Mhm.
everything nicely portioned there and they hand it to you in your individual cups. So, yes, I'm a sample queen, but only at Costco.
Okay.
And I don't think there is a Costco in the Driftless region. I think their nearest one is probably closer to Madison.
Well, again, with the farms and everything there, that he seems perfectly located for living kind of off the land in this way. And then our last bit of uniquely Wisconsin comes from a bar of all places, and a bar in Madison. And I can't think of a bigger challenge for a bar in Wisconsin than to enforce the rule that this bar has. Tell us more.
Yes. So since it opened in the mid 60s, Le Tigre Lounge in Madison has only one rule: no swearing inside. And it's just funny because you would think that maybe they made that rule because this is like a super classy bar, but it's super kitschy. It's the complete opposite. Its name is like named after a tiger. So it's all the way in your face tiger decor in the inside. It's located in a strip mall on Madison's west side, right off the highway. But the owner, he's the second generation in his family that this bar was passed down to. And he was just explaining that when he grew up, it was just not respectful for men to curse around women. I would say the other can be true too. I mean,
Mhm.
not really respectful to curse it to strangers. You can throw it in your own language, in your own house, in your own family. But his dad started the rule, and the second generation owner, Paul, just decided to continue it. And it's a fun thing. Of course, I just want to put the disclaimer that customers aren't ejected if they swear upon the first time. They're talked to nicely,
Mhm.
rationalized with, and then they're being too unruly, then they may get thrown out.
I think first off, I've been to a Madison bar or two or 10, and especially around the state capitol there, it is darn near impossible, although I did just say darn near impossible, to talk about your day in government work without dropping an F-bomb or all kinds of other things that would get me in trouble with the FCC if I said it here. So it's much like our last story. It's almost quaint. It's almost refreshing that it's a reminder that people can actually go an hour or two without cussing. It can be done.
And maybe the differentiating factor here, Pat, is that you said it's hard to do around the Capitol, especially where you get a lot of those government workers. But this bar is on the west side of Madison. That's just a much more peaceful, serene life out there near Middleton.
I was going to say, the Middleton life, it's life is good over there. And so again, what's the name of the bar?
Le Tigre Lounge.
Okay.
It's not far off the Beltline if you're in that area.
I just wonder if anybody would be inspired and they'd put a rule like that where they are in their workplace or in their restaurant. And I wonder how long it would last, because this one's what, a couple of generations. So
Yeah, it's 60 years old. What I've seen, I've never really seen the outright rule before, but I have seen swear jars. I think we
mhm,
had one in my last newsroom. Newsrooms are notoriously full of colorful
yes.
language that people can't necessarily say on air all the time. But I've never seen the all-out rule enforced. But the other side takeaway from this story, and just a great tip, I'm wondering if you see this by you, Pat, but so many of my favorite restaurants in the Madison area and surrounding suburbs are in strip malls. There's those like really unassuming places
Mhm.
that really have delicious food. And I like to think that I do know good food because I am from the Chicago area and food is our everything. So I I don't know, like, is that across Wisconsin or just unique to Madison, you think?
Oh, I think it's can be any place. I've had some of my favorite pizzas have come from places that were in a strip mall where they said we don't want all of the overhead cost of having our own building, so we'll be located here. And I think the location doesn't matter nearly so much as the recipe. And if you've got a good recipe, which might include a good no swearing environment, then you are far more likely to be successful at whatever it is you're doing. So you get that story and more in our daily newsletter. Christina Laurie puts it together. Sign up at upnorthnewswi.com. Christina, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me back, Pat.
Never a problem. And again, stay on top of that unabashedly Wisconsin news by signing up for our newsletter. Oftentimes on Tuesdays, we'll meet with Sharita Booker as well, who puts together our most clicked, most read, most watched social media posts. And again, to get all of that, search for upnorthnewswi.com or upnorthnewswi on social media feeds. We've still got a busy week ahead of us here. It's only Tuesday. And again, we're looking to talk to Hans Breitenmoser in our next hour about some movement on rules that deal with undocumented immigrants working on Wisconsin dairy farms. Now, we hope to hear from Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez later this morning. Then tomorrow morning, we're going to visit with Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, who is marking 1 year in office since she was appointed to the post, and is talking about her efforts to again defend democracy against attacks by the far right, whether it's calling out a member of the Wisconsin Elections Commission who served as a fake elector, or otherwise calling attention to the ways that democracy is under assault in Wisconsin. Sarah Godlewski will be talking about her work in the Secretary of State's office. And then on Thursday, our Women Win Wisconsin segment with Dr. Kristen Lyerly will be a big one because the spring elections will be past us by Thursday. And so we'll be talking about, the next round of races that I told you about before, with an August primary and a November general election, and finding out, basically the first wave of candidates is going to start announcing by the end of this week. They didn't want to be confused with the spring election candidates. And so you'll see some of them making announcements this week. So Kristen will give us a kind of a roadmap on what to expect. And we'll be joined on Thursday morning as well by Kate Duffy from Motherhood for Good, a group that we normally talk to every other Monday here on Up North News Radio. But again, the Motherhood for Good group is certainly monitoring things with Women Win Wisconsin and wanting to weigh in on some of what's going to be happening later this year as well. So stick around for that Thursday morning at 7:30 in our Women Win Wisconsin segment. Again, if you missed it earlier, the Brewers have their home opener today against the Minnesota Twins. You can catch that game on News from the Center and Richland Center, WRJN and Racine Kenosha, Oshkosh Air Support, and 98Q Country in Park Falls. 2:35 is when the broadcast begins this afternoon for a 3:05 or 3:15 first pitch over at American Family Field. The Bucks are in Washington, D.C. tonight, taking on the Washington Wizards. Now, that game will be on locally grown radio in Wisconsin Rapids and Lake Air in Amory, just those two stations, because the others will have the Brewers game. But then tomorrow, more stations will be covering the Bucks as they are home to host the Memphis Grizzlies tomorrow. All right, today's history lesson and some musical memories coming up in just a bit on this Tuesday morning on Up North News Radio. You're Up North.
bears heavy on my mind.
305, 315, no, 310, of course. The group was Fleetwood Mac. The album was Rumors, and it hit number 1 for the first time on this day in 1977.
That's my year.
Your year? You're
That's when I was
claiming it?
born.
Okay. Well, there's no doubt that in utero you were exposed to the gang singing hit after hit after hit after hit on the Rumors album, which spent an astonishing 31 non-consecutive weeks at the number 1 spot on the album chart. It was a force, to put it mildly.
Yeah. Even like I didn't come to know Fleetwood Mac until I was in my, I don't know, like teens.
Uh-huh.
Even they were still huge with that record back then. That was the 80s.
Yeah. And I suppose some folks might say, well, it was also the disco era, and so it was a nice break from disco. Perhaps, but still, it was just good music.
Yes.
And so there you go. 1977 on this day. We'll play a few more cuts from Rumors throughout the course of the day here. Oh, by the way, I want to correct on the Brewers game today. I said, it might be 305. It might be 315. Greg?
310.
310. Should have split the difference. 310 is when these things get started.
And that's when we get all of the angry phone calls.
I know. Who got it wrong by 5 minutes? I'm so sorry.
Take your
310.
liberal message and incorrect baseball games and straight to hell.
Let's see. We've got some birth anniversaries today. Singer-songwriter Leon Russell was born this day in 1942.
I'm up on a tightrope. One side's hate and one is hope.
Leon Russell passed away in 2016. This is also the 85th anniversary of the birth of Marvin Gaye, who died. Was it just yesterday?
It was yesterday.
Yesterday was the anniversary of his death. It was just a day before what would have been his birthday at the time. But 85 years ago today, Marvin Gaye was born. Happy birthday to Emmylou Harris. The country legend is 77 years old today.
2 months later, got trouble in mind. Oh, my baby.
Did you ever see the Ken Burns country music documentary?
No, and I've wanted to. I've not seen it yet.
They use Emmylou Harris in there as a really great storytelling tool, as a hub of someone who loved folk music and singer-songwriter and was like, no thank you, country. And then was exposed to it and became this ambassador, this person who's like, I will bring it to the masses. And that's what she did.
And just universally respected and loved by the music community.
Yes.
So she's going to get more than a little bit of love today on her 77th birthday. On this day in 1982, the Falklands War. Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands on this day in 1982. The Falkland Islands being a territory of the United Kingdom. So essentially, Argentina was declaring war on Great Britain. And I mean, it was a full-fledged war for several weeks there. Like battleships were sunk, on both sides and things like that. It was kind of, 17, 18 years old. It was surreal back then. Like, is this really happening? Argentina versus Great Britain? Yeah, over a pile of rocks, basically. There was nothing
Yeah.
but sheep living on these things, but it got real ugly real fast this day in 1982. 70th birthday today for singer Gregory Abbott, who had this 1980s hit.
I'm glad you picked up on my telepathy now.
Oh, wow.
You know you did.
This brings me.
Doesn't it, though?
Oh, well.
Gregory Abbott's 70 years old today. On this day in 1991, Lenny Kravitz released his second album, Mama Said, which included this hit single, which was a plea for reconciliation with his soon-to-be ex-wife, actress Lisa Bonet.
You know what's really infuriating about Lenny Kravitz?
What?
So in the 90s, early 2000s, he cut his locks off. He has a different look. He's since grown his locks back. He looks exactly like he did back in 1991. Like, no age.
That's what
None.
I knew. I knew that's what you were going to say. Is like, you know what I hate about Lenny Kravitz? Yeah, the fact that he will never
Like,
not
people
be
were like,
handsome.
Paul Rudd doesn't age, and
Yes.
Patrick Stewart. No, Lenny Kravitz was frozen in time in 1991, and that's it.
Yeah, he did. And just so much talent as well. So,
Oh, yeah.
again, just a great song from an album released this day in 1991. It was on this day in 2014 that there was a shooting spree at Fort Hood in Texas that left 4 dead, 16 others injured. And again, raised the point of it isn't about needing a good guy with a gun. You're on an army base surrounded with weaponry. And you're not going to get to your gun faster than the bad guy can shoot the bullets. The problem is the guns. We talked earlier about how Easter coincided with National Transgender Day of Visibility. And again, the coincidence of it, because Easter's on different dates every year, but these national dates, these commemorative dates, they're fixed on the calendar. There were so many other things that were on the calendar that day. Look at today. Today is Autism Awareness Day. It's Children's Picture Book Day. It's Love Your Produce Manager Day today, Greg. So when you're at the supermarket there, you can love your produce manager, but don't love your produce. Don't squeeze the cantaloupe, shall we say?
I want Ted right now. Hug.
Hug. It is National Peanut Butter and Jelly Day.
Aw.
It's National Ferret Day.
Ugh.
It is National Reconciliation Day. It is Day of Action for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And finally, it is Ride Your Horse to a Bar Day, which we still tell the story here in Chippewa Falls of the time that we went to, it's now called the Sandbar. I forget what it was called, several years back. And we, pulled in one Saturday night or something, and there were 2 horses tied up outside, of this bar in Lake Wissota. Went in, and couple of ladies were there, hooting and a hollering, I guess you would say. And yeah, they let people know, they didn't want to hassle with a DUI, so they brought their horses to the bar. So it does happen that people will take their trusty steed. And in fact, I learned when I was doing a little bit of genealogy research and found a branch of my family tree out in the Montrose, Minnesota area, which is just west of Minneapolis. I got to meet some distant relatives there. They were telling some stories, and one of them was of my, would have been what, great grandfather, and how he liked to go into town with his horse and his wagon, kind of like today's pickup truck basically. And once he had a few too many barley pops and could not really function, so folks at the bar threw him into his wagon behind his horse, slapped that horse on the backside, and his wife found him in the morning still in the bed of the wagon. The horse knew how to get home from there.
Why didn't we see that on Little House on the Prairie?
That's a very valid question. We really should see more of that. Coming up in our next hour, we will hopefully be hearing from Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez.
We're
and
out.
More. It's not 5920. Welcome back, Pat. Oh, too funny. this, put that there. There we go. Sarah, you there?
I'm here.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming on board. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Not looking forward to the snow down here, but it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, no, so nice to have you here. Like I said, we'll get started about 7:06 or so. So give me a few of the things apart from encouraging people to vote today. We're going to talk about the constitutional amendments.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
That's perfect.
All right. What else is on your to-do list today? Just the there's school referendums and school board races.
Yep.
Other things you want people to know about today?
Just how important it is to make sure that they vote today, even though there may not be contested elections. It's still important to vote.
Good. Okay. Sounds great. And then while I have you here, I'll probably hit another area or two. We're doing a lot on what the legislature didn't get done this year. So do you want to get into two or three things that you would have liked to have seen done?
Yeah, that would be great. Medicaid expansion is one area that I like to talk about. So
Okay. And I almost always accompany that with not just Medicaid expansion, but failure to extend postpartum care to a year.
Yep.
So we'll
that
definitely
as well.
get into that as well. Okay. And let's see. No, that's plenty to get us started here. So what I'm going to do is tuck you back into the waiting room. That way you don't have to worry about making noise and everything.
Okay.
So when we come back in 5 minutes, then I'll pull you back up into the studio here, and we'll get going.
Perfect. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. All right, here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
On this Tuesday morning, April 2nd, 2024, it's Election Day across Wisconsin. There's a presidential primary, there are local elections, statewide referenda on some constitutional amendments, and we'll talk about that and much more with Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez in just a moment. But first, to give you a quick weather update, because coinciding with Election Day and with the Brewers' home opener against the Twins at American Family Field today, we're dealing with a winter storm warning. It looks like a pretty nasty little beast is heading this way for counties that include Marinette, Menominee, Oconto, Dorr, Shawano, Wapaka, Outagamie, Brown, Kewaunee, Waushara, Winnebago, Calumet, and Manitowoc. All of those counties have a winter storm warning in effect from 1 o'clock this afternoon until 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, as rain changes over to wet, heavy snow, accumulations of 8 to 12 inches in many places, 14 inches in far northeast Wisconsin, lower accumulations by the Lake Michigan shoreline, but gusty winds of 45 miles an hour will cause blowing and drifting snow tonight. There's a winter weather advisory for basically the entire ring of counties adjacent to that winter storm warning area. So again, in all of these places, take good care whether you're heading to the stadium, whether you're heading to your favorite polling place. You've got, of course, as Rob is telling us, Fox 11 is calling this snowstorm Cora because some places believe in naming their snowstorms. Rob checks in from Tigerton saying, good morning from Tigerton. It's cloudy and 33. People in eastern Wisconsin, he writes, should get out and vote before the weather turns bad. I'll be voting at the historic Germania Town Hall and then getting my snowblower ready for the main event tonight and tomorrow morning. Yep, and that's why I voted early, in-person absentee, because, again, you just never know what's coming up on Election Day. It could be weather-related. It could be something else that goes on in your life. But right now, before all of that arrives, it's 37 here on Lake Wissota, Hayward at 31, Park Falls 32, Wausau checking in at 34 degrees, Green Bay 37, La Crosse 35, Wisconsin Rapids 33. It's 37 in Oshkosh, 38 in Madison, 36 in Waukesha. And again, it's going to be a busy day. Don't yet know if former President Donald Trump is going to still stick with the rally in Green Bay given the winter storm warning. But we did find out this morning that President Joe Biden is going to be coming back to Wisconsin next week, Monday, to talk about economic issues. So for all that and so much more ground to cover on this Tuesday morning, we are quite honored to be joined by Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez. Lieutenant Governor Rodriguez, good morning.
Good morning.
So nice to have you here, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, really getting out the word that there's so much more to this election than a presidential primary, which is basically sewn up by both parties. But there's just a lot on the ballot that you want to make sure that people know about.
Right. There's a couple of things on the ballot that I think people should be paying attention to. And one of those things is the two amendments that you're going to have to choose, the constitutional amendments that you're going to have to choose is usually at the end of your ballot. Both of them, I am recommending that you vote no on both of those. And let me tell you why. Because the first one on the amendment or the one that's there is really talking about not having any outside funding for elections. Now, if we all remember 2020, a little thing called COVID happened, and we needed to be able to administer elections with other resources, whether that was masks, whether that was making sure that we had larger spaces for people. And the legislature did not add additional funding to the folks to be able to administer those elections. And so that's when they went for grant funding. And so what this would do is make sure that people could not actually apply for any grant funding. So that's one of the ones that's on there today. The other one is, who is defined as an election worker? This is already defined in legislation. We do not need a constitutional amendment to define who an election worker is. It is just really trying to weaken our elections. It's trying to put doubt in people's minds that there is some concern about who an election worker could be. And so I just want to make sure that people are really aware of this and that it is very, very challenging if these two would pass to make sure that we can administer elections effectively here in Wisconsin without additional funding from the legislature.
It really is worth noting, and we do so repeatedly on this program, that in no other developed nation on earth is there an entire political class that is dedicated to making it harder to vote or making it harder to administer elections. You just have to think back to in Georgia, where they made it illegal to bring water to people standing in line to vote. And now you're looking at an effort to block funds that could make elections smooth and safe and convenient for Wisconsinites. None of this is something I thought that we would necessarily see in our lifetime. And yet, Sarah, here we are again facing an entire political group in this country that wants to make it tougher to administer elections in our state.
Right. We've heard it across the board. They try to make it more difficult for college students to vote. They've tried to make it more difficult for individuals to be able to, give their ballots in. The one example I give is, my mother, she's almost 80. She lives with me. And we often vote early. And so we often vote early and by mail. And I am not allowed to put her ballot in the mailbox. She has to do it herself. That is the law. That is something that they made sure that that passed in here in Wisconsin. And that is just the silliest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, that I can't put it in the mailbox for her. She has to do it herself.
It is. And look, it wouldn't stop there. You look at the things that haven't happened yet, but were thwarted along the way. The far right group that tried to get perhaps tens, if not hundreds of thousands of voter names stricken from the rolls in Wisconsin based on, shaky data at best. That's the kind of thing that could simply come back again next year if elections this November don't go well, right?
Absolutely. This is the agenda, trying to make it more difficult to vote, and particularly targeting those who, traditionally vote for Democrats. That is just really, really upsetting to me. So, I even look at where I live, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. I live in Waukesha County. And if I wanted to go in person to vote, my line is not going to be that long. But if you look at some of our larger cities and you look at some of our college towns, you see lines going down the block to be able to vote when you have a lot more individuals within those cities. That shouldn't happen that way. We should all have the same access to be able to vote.
Absolutely. And now for folks that will be voting today, especially in Northeast Wisconsin, if you set aside for a moment the winter storm that's hitting there now, I still wonder what your thoughts are that the former president schedules a rally for Green Bay for the same day as the election. It sounds rather disruptive, more like a vanity project. If people choose to go see Donald Trump rather than remembering to go vote, it doesn't seem like the best way to run a get out the vote effort is to have a competing rally on election day. Maybe the weather will play a role in it, and this will all be a moot point. Who knows?
That's true. He may not be coming at all. I mean, and I can't really understand the many, many bizarre things that former President Trump has done and said. But we know he doesn't really care about Wisconsin. He hasn't been here since 2022. He has not been here. And we know that President Biden and Vice President Harris have been here just collectively 7 times in the last year. They know how important Wisconsin is. They care about us here. They're the ones who are showing up for us. And now some last minute primary visit, which may or may not even happen because of the snow, I mean, we just know that he's not really interested or invested in Wisconsinites at all.
Now, I really want your take as lieutenant governor and somebody from the Waukesha County area. There is a real deep dive in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel by longtime reporter Craig Gilbert, talking about the divide between suburban voters, especially around Milwaukee, versus voters throughout the rest of the state. Now, again, we're talking about Republican voters in this case. But again, from your geographic standpoint, he points out that once upon a time, Ted Cruz won the primary here 8 years ago because Republicans around your neck of the woods in the suburbs there really were turned off by Donald Trump compared to, the rest of Wisconsin. Then all the Republican voters kind of came together during the Trump presidency, but polling indicates that divide again. You're closer to Republican voters, in that part of the state than I am. Do you sense that as well, that the suburban voters are once again really in play compared to, say a decade ago?
Absolutely. I live here. I live in Waukesha County. I kind of joke that if I didn't have Republican friends, I wouldn't have very many friends, right?
Same up here. Yes, ma'am.
There you go. And so we talk a lot and respectfully about policy. And that is what I know everybody wants us to get back to, because it is very, very frustrating. But I will tell you that, Donald Trump gets very little love from suburban voters over here. They are just frustrated with his rhetoric. They do not want to go back to the chaos of his administration. And so I am thinking that, President Biden is going to do very, very well in Waukesha County and the suburbs, because he talks about things that are important to the people that I live next to, whether that's abortion rights, whether that's the right to vote, whether that's fully funding public schools, whether that's making sure we've got a strong economy that works for everybody. These are the things that people want to make sure our leaders are focusing on, not this divisive rhetoric and chaos that President Trump represents.
Right. Now, among the comments coming in through social media, Mary puts on YouTube saying, did they word these questions so that anyone can understand what it means? I feel they write in circles to confuse the voter. And I'll just give my 2 cents on that, saying, yeah, they are written in a somewhat a confusing manner. And the whole point is they're trying to sell this on concepts alone. They're just going to say, do you not want private money? Without explaining everything that the Lieutenant Governor just did. So when we come back after this very short break, we'll talk to Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez more about the importance of today's elections and also things that the legislature didn't get done before starting a 10-month paid vacation. That's all coming up just a little over 60 seconds away, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this Tuesday morning. When you're here, you're up north. We'll be right back. All right, Sarah, that's just a 60-second break, and then we'll have the second half and get things wrapped up for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Okay, here we go.
I know nothing to say. Someone has taken my place when times go bad.
Tomorrow on the program, Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski reflects on 1 year in office and again the continued assaults on democracy in Wisconsin. Then Thursday, Dr. Kristen Lyerly and our friends from Motherhood for Good will be part of a rather blockbuster Women Win Wisconsin segment. With the spring elections behind us, we're starting to get clarity on who will be running for some of the offices coming up this fall. Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez is back with us to talk more about these elections, both today and the ones coming down the road, and things that did and didn't get done in the state capitol during the most recent legislative session. Lieutenant Governor, if we could talk about for a moment the fact that there are around 90 plus school referendums on the ballot. And again, we've certainly mentioned this quite a bit on the program, that if people are frustrated by that, the place to take out their frustrations is not, today in the voting booth, but perhaps November. And I want your opinion on whether these new legislative maps this fall might make it less likely that we see nearly 100 school referendums on the ballot every cycle.
And that is honestly the hope. I am so excited that we now have fair maps in Wisconsin. We have a fighting chance to do the types of legislation that Wisconsinites want out of the legislature. And that is things like fully funding our public schools. Why are there so many referendums on the ballot? That is because this is the only options the school have right now to be able to provide the services that kids need. I have the privilege of going all around the state of Wisconsin, and I talk to folks within school districts every day. They know that they need to provide additional services, whether that's mental health care for kids. We know that COVID really had made our kids struggle when they stayed home, when the schools closed, and schools are trying to catch up, but they need a little extra help with that. And that's what many of these referendums on the ballot is to try to provide additional services or additional room for kids to be able to learn in an area where they can be successful.
And so, again, we'll follow how those school referendum issues go down tonight. We'll have results tomorrow morning as part of our homeroom segment and talk to folks affected by the Milwaukee ballot question, as well as others going on around the state. Let's turn the focus for a sec to the legislative session that recently finished. And as a former legislator yourself, I know you've heard this many times, even though you were on the Democratic side and it was Republican leadership that was doing this. But Republican leadership was putting the legislature on paid hiatus for 9 or 10 months at a time, and they're doing it again this year. And again, with a record budget surplus, it certainly sounds to me like another lost opportunity to do good by the Wisconsin taxpayers, families, farmers, small business owners, and more.
Oh, I agree. There were so many things that could have been happening in this last legislative session. And I'll talk about one that's near and dear to my heart, which is Badger Care or Medicaid expansion here in Wisconsin. We are now only one of 10 states nationally that has not expanded Medicaid, and very soon probably to become 9 or 8 states, as we look at many of these southern states that have traditionally resisted Medicaid expansion are now putting it through their legislature. But we have the unique distinction in Wisconsin of actually being able to save money on our general budget if we expanded Medicaid. We're talking about $2 billion with a B that we would be able to save over the biennium if we expanded here in Wisconsin. And that is just, it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make fiscal sense. It's the right thing to do for individuals to be able to have health care. And so that's really frustrating that type of legislation, I wrote it when I was in the assembly, didn't even get a hearing in the health committee, wouldn't even have the discussion about what this would look like. And so that is just very frustrating to me as a nurse, as somebody who has worked in public health and dealt with individuals who did not have access to appropriate and affordable health care. It affects everybody's lives, and it is a nonpartisan issue. When we look, this is something that the vast majority of Wisconsinites want us to do. They want us to expand Medicaid. They want people to have access to affordable health insurance. And we should just do this. It just makes sense all around.
Oh, this is such a long-running temper tantrum over the fact that the Affordable Care Act passed. And then there's a subset of this whole topic, and that is that Wisconsin is one of only I forget if it's 3 or 4 states that haven't, at the very least, expanded Medicaid coverage so that new moms have stable and affordable health care coverage a year postpartum rather than, what is it currently, 60 days, I believe?
Yeah, that is just that is shameful. Honestly, that is shameful that we have not done that. And people, I don't know if individuals understand how that postpartum period can be quite dangerous for the mother, that we do have morbidity and mortality. We have individuals who die or have health complications after having a baby. And to be able to provide them 12 months of stable health care, that's the kind of thing that just makes sense. Again, we want moms to be able to take care of their new babies. We want them not to have to worry about how they're going to afford their medications or how they're going to go back into the doctor if they have complications. And the fact that we can't even expand it 12 months postpartum is, again, just really, really shameful for Wisconsin. And it's something that I'm hoping when we have these new maps and we get a more balanced legislature within Wisconsin, we're going to be able to do these types of things for individuals.
And let's be clear on this particular issue. This one came out of the Senate. I think it was 32-1, if I'm not mistaken. It was as bipartisan as it gets. It didn't get brought up in the Assembly because of one person, Assembly Speaker Robin Vos. If you wanted that bill to come up for a vote, it would have come up, it would have passed overwhelmingly, and we wouldn't be talking about this. And it just, again, goes to show what one person with, an ideology hostile to, families and good government is capable of doing when you have gerrymandered maps.
Absolutely. And we all need health care. This is, I talk about this all the time. So my father actually was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in his 60s. He worked every day of his life. He was a Vietnam veteran, Navy veteran, literally worked the Friday before he got diagnosed with Alzheimer's that next Monday in his 60s. And anyone who's been taking care of a family member with dementia knows how just awful that is on your finances. So he was on Medicaid at the end of his life. And it was something that was such a blessing for our family to be able to have his healthcare expenses covered. I just don't see why this is something that shouldn't be offered to everybody that would need the type of healthcare that my father needed. And so, he did what he was supposed to do. He served his country. He worked every day of his life, but sometimes we need a little bit of help. And that's the kind of thing that Medicaid can do for folks.
Absolutely. And it just did not get done once again in this session. Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez has been our special guest this morning. Sarah, thank you so much for encouraging people to get out and vote. We'll look forward to visiting again with you real soon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Hans Breitenmoser coming up next to talk about the prospect of agricultural visa reform in Wisconsin. That's next. You're Up North. All right. We are clear. Sarah, thank you again so very much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Bye now.
Yeah, keep safe.
Thank you. Take care. Hello there, Hans.
Morning, Pat.
How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Did you have a good Easter weekend?
It was lovely. Thank you. How about you?
Yeah, we were in Idaho, got back, well, actually just a couple of hours ago, basically. But yeah, it was a long travel night, but it was worth it. It was good to see everybody. Okay, so let's see. What else is on your radar these days?
I don't know, just trying to get ready for spring.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys? Do you have snow in your forecast, or are you too far removed from the storm here?
We're supposed to get a wintry mix, I think, is what it's been referred to. So
the old wintry mix. Okay.
Yeah. Well, now they're saying light snow, and then they're talking 70% chance of light snow for tomorrow. So.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, we got about 3 minutes in this break here. I'm going to tuck you back in the waiting room so you can make noise, and I'll check in with you in a couple minutes.
All right, sounds good.
All right, here we go. As always, to reach the show, 855-75-CIVIC, 855-75-CIVIC. You can also email us, radio@upnorthnewswi.com, or if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, put a comment there. We'll see it and maybe put it up on air as well. Hans Breitenmoser joins us now from up in Lincoln County, dairy farmer there, and we'll cover conditions and prices and also the potential for some progress on migrant labor and agricultural visas. Hans, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Pat. I'm fine. How are you doing?
Really good, thank you. You have a good Easter weekend? Anything special?
We sure did. We got to color eggs with Grandma and eat ham with my sister. So what's not to like?
Oh, absolutely. No, that's outstanding. Let's talk first about the weather. You're not right in the bullseye of that winter storm that's going to be affecting northeast Wisconsin, but whether it's what you're getting today on the periphery or the like the 10 inches we got about a week ago that quickly, melted away, I referred to it as time-released rain. This is really these are net positives for farmers who've had to deal with near drought conditions, right?
You better believe it. We need soil moisture, and we need it bad. So we'll take what we can get these days for sure.
Yeah. But then, you have to not only deal with, the weather, but you have to deal with the markets as well. And as I was looking up some of the latest from the USDA on prices, it talked about how the Wisconsin all milk price for February was $19 per hundredweight, $1 above last month's price, but $1.40 below last February. The price for corn is sitting at $4.14 a bushel, soybeans $12.10 a bushel, oats $4.08. All of these numbers, what I keep seeing in them is it's not easy to be a farmer. It never was anyway, but the markets have not exactly been on the side of the producer lately.
Well, it is what it is, Pat. We just keep plugging along, but it would be nice to get a little bump in some of these commodities. For me, especially, of course, milk, corn. The price of corn. I'm typically not on the selling end of that equation, so I don't get too nervous about that. But the price of corn drives a lot of other things. But yeah, the milk price would be nice if we could get a couple more cents on the milk price for sure.
And then I didn't mention, hay and alfalfa hay and things like that, where again, that can be a kind of a boon or a bust to farmers depending on what they're getting for moisture. On any given year, dairy farmers could be sellers or buyers when it comes to, hay for their use.
Oh, for sure. And what we went into last fall sitting on about half as much haylage as what we would like to have been. Mm-hmm. And of course, that had us chopping more corn, which had us combining less corn, which, so these things all are connected and are very, very impactful. So it would be nice to get some decent rain so we can get a decent hay crop this year for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's turn our attention to something that had caught my eye about 2 weeks ago or so, when again, to back up and look at the whole issue of immigration reform. We already know that there was a bipartisan deal in Congress to increase border security and reform immigration, a bipartisan deal. But then Donald Trump said, nope, I don't want that to pass, despite always telling us there's an emergency at the border. And so that thing is currently sitting dead. But I was surprised about 2 weeks ago to see that there was a bipartisan working group that was working on some of these issues, and they put forward some new recommendations on how to reform what's called the H-2A visa program for basically migrant foreign workers working on agricultural jobs. And it's basically because what, Hans? There are agriculture visas right now that are short-term for like harvesting crops, but that doesn't do you much good in dairy, does it?
Yeah, historically, those things we haven't been able to take advantage of those. Dairy farming is 365 days of the year, regardless where you are in the country. And so animals need to be fed, animals need to be milked, animals need to be cleaned up after. And so the H-2A thing has typically been used by Christmas tree guys and fruit guys and vegetable guys and so forth. And so it would be nice to have access to that labor pool in dairy. But politics du jour, it's tough to get some of these things done because of silly political reasons sometimes.
Right, because something like this, while it could pass as a standalone measure, a lot of things that could pass as standalone measures end up getting wrapped up into other issues. And if there's a disagreement somewhere else in the package, the entire package stalls out. So this agricultural labor working group did put forward some recommendations on reforming the program to address things like dairy that are not seasonal and would benefit from supporting skilled workers. There would be driver's license reform on the federal level. We've talked about that with Tony Gonzalez. And yes, for folks that didn't follow that, how vital is that to have driver's license reform when it comes to migrant farm labor in Wisconsin?
Well, of course, it's very vital. I mean, anybody that's driving up and down the road should be concerned and interested in having everybody else driving up and down the road have a proper driver's license, because that means that person took a test. They understand the rules of the road, and they're safe out there. That has an impact on everyone's insurance and everyone's safety. So that's sort of pretty low-hanging fruit and should be able to get done. But for sort of xenophobic and goofy reasons, people have decided that some folks shouldn't have driver's licenses and shouldn't be allowed to get them. And so we need to get back to a place where if you can pass a test, you can go ahead and drive to work or to school or wherever you need to go.
Well, and it would ensure, again, safer operation if, people could go through the exams and the licensing procedures and not just, take their chances because they don't want to get caught. The group also talked about amending the National Labor Relations Act, again, so that, migrant workers have a better sense of protection under things like the Fair Labor Standards Act when it comes to worker protection, wage rates, health, safety, housing conditions. Again, for folks that want to make this a divisive issue, they're not exactly rushing in to make sure that these workers get a fair wage and safe conditions. But that's absolutely vital if Wisconsin's going to continue to have a healthy dairy industry, isn't it?
Well, I sure think so. I mean, the reality is that most of the dairy products that everybody eats get to their table as a direct result of foreign-born workers. That's just a fact. And we can get nostalgic about how things used to be, but in the meantime, there's no unringing that bell. We rely very heavily on folks who were born in other places besides the United States. That's just a fact of agriculture. That's the fact of the hospitality industry. That's a fact of a lot of industries. And it's fairly simple math, Pat. I mean, as the birth rate declines in this country, we get older, and there's going to be less people to do some of the physical labor that's required. Now, automation has played a huge role and will continue to. There's the amount of labor that it takes to get things done now compared to several years ago has changed greatly, but there's still so much work to be done. And so we need to be realistic about that and look at the country as a whole and say, where are these folks coming from? And if they're coming in here to do the hard work, then by God, they should have protections and should be paid appropriately. And so we can have a functioning system.
So I asked the folks over at Wisconsin Farmers Union, Darren Von Ruden and others about this, and the note sent back to me notes that the House Agriculture Committee's Agricultural Labor Working Group, which is what we've been talking about here, is not directly related to the Farm Bill, which is still delayed and sitting, in Congress. It's more tied to showing what the House Agriculture Committee's agriculture labor priorities are, that Wisconsin Farmers Union, National Farmers Union are not pushing for these recommendations to go into the Farm Bill, but would like Congress to work on passing bipartisan legislation. And all of that is just to say that, again, Hans, there's a couple of different moving pieces here in Congress. There's these labor rules that we just talked about with agriculture visas and things, but there's still the entire Farm Bill, which covers so much else about farming and nutrition programs and ag trade and you name it. And it's all just been sitting there on hold well over 6 months late by now.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, you add labor to that and it's just going to gum up the works even more. They can't get the basic Farm Bill done. We sure as hell don't want to complicate it anymore because these guys have proven themselves incapable of getting the work done that we used to take for granted. That was a thing that they had to do and they got done and we moved on. And now that's just too high of a bar. So yeah, to complicate that with throwing labor in there in a big way is probably unwise.
Right. So you've got separate packages here that the House Agriculture Committee is looking at. Now, a member of that House Agriculture Committee is Republican Derek Van Orden from the 3rd Congressional District, who, when he's not, throwing grenades on Twitter constantly, did at one point make note that he was part of this agricultural labor working group. But apart from maybe one passing mention of it, I've heard very little else coming from a congressman who is, facing a tough reelection, and who I've said repeatedly could and should be a champion of these kinds of agricultural reforms. But the fact that you're not hearing him trumpet this from the rooftops almost makes me wonder, if again, the xenophobia of his party and perhaps him individually gets in the way of him actually being a voice for reform, despite being on this group.
Yeah. Well, again, politics, Pat. I mean, these working groups have to be filled with lawmakers, and so elections matter, right? We elect these lawmakers, and they don't just sit in a corner someplace. They get put on committees and working groups and so forth. And so it goes back to who's sitting around that table and how much is going to get done. Is there an earnest interest in getting the work done, or is that person just filling the seat because they're filling the seat? And then them having to deal with the folks back home that helped get them elected, that are perhaps super xenophobic and concerned about everybody coming from a foreign country working in this country and not really understanding the issues. So I'd like to have more confidence in this deal, but I'm having a hard time here.
Well, and that's noted by Wisconsin Farmers Union President Darren Von Ruden, whose statement to us, said that they are encouraged by the bipartisan strides made by the working group. Their work on addressing these pressing issues is commendable. However, he writes, given the current political landscape, achieving meaningful reform before the November elections remains uncertain. We remain cautiously hopeful and urge continued bipartisan cooperation to enact much needed changes that support our agricultural workforce and ensure the vitality of our farms. A similar statement came out from Rob LaRue, president of the National Farmers Union. In other words, saying, well, this all sounds good, but, talk is cheap. Let's see some actual action.
Talk is cheap. Right? Talk is cheap. It costs money to buy whiskey. That's what my dad always said. So I don't know. I mean, I think Darren and Rob are obviously more. They're very diplomatic, and I think they were well spoken there. I shouldn't be so negative, because negativity doesn't do us any good. We should be interested in making sure something happens and it gets across the finish line, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that you get a little cynical after a while, Pat, when you see some of these canaries that are involved in some of these projects, what they're capable of doing and what they're capable of not doing. Sort of guides our attitudes towards this. But I'm sincere in my hope that something good comes of this.
Well, and that's where it should be. We should be sincere in our hope that something good comes of it and that people act in good faith. But then I just remind people that Oklahoma Senate Republican James Lankford, who led the way on this bipartisan border security immigration bill, a true bipartisan leader who is as Republican as they come, was censured by his own Oklahoma Republican Party for having the audacity to try to work on immigration reform. So again, there's a lot of talk out there, but like you said repeatedly, the politics of the situation is just another matter entirely. But we at least got some details out on what could happen down the road. Hans Brighton Moser, thank you so much for the update. Take care up there with the weather, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, Pat. Take care.
All right. Chad Holmes is coming up next. You're Up North. All right. We are clear. Who is popping in there?
Oh, that's my daughter, Lila.
Hi, Lila.
Say hi, Pat.
Nice to see you. All right, man. Have a great day. Talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Yep. Be good. Thank you.
All right. See ya. Bye. Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Yeah. Just looking at Derek Van Orden. We're just going to start there, That's all
He
I have
called
to
him a
say.
so-called reporter that his rag is going out of business. I'm like, man, could you
be
just-
more wrong? Here we
Yeah,
go.
I think he
5
just won
seconds.
2 more awards.
Yep.
All right, come back.
That is the music that will greet you coming up in minutes on Bull Falls Radio in Wausau to mark the start of the Chad Holmes Show with the aforementioned Mr. Holmes. Chad, how are you?
I am doing good. Always an exciting day.
Yeah. All right. How did we get a little echo from you today? Who's hitting what buttons? I tell you, who's
space?
I think it's me again. I don't know. I don't.
Can we just start picking on Ian, your producer, just generically? I mean,
No,
can
it
he
has
just be
nothing
our
to
fault?
do with him because this is on my laptop. Which
okay.
Turn your volume. Turn the volume on your speaker off, not on StreamYard, on your laptop.
All right.
We'll see what that does. Well, you do that.
All right. Do you still hear me?
Yep, we still hear the echo. So we'll just deal with Chad in space today. That is just fine. So I mentioned just a few minutes ago that there's this bipartisan movement on migrant farm labor. Derek Van Orden, the congressman from the western edge of Wisconsin, part of central Wisconsin, could be a champion of this. Could be a champion for bipartisan reform. Instead, he's making Donald Trump look like a part-timer when it comes to using Twitter to just constantly, criticize people. Yesterday, the congressman went after Dan Schaefer, Milwaukee area journalist of the recombobulation area, one of the most awarded journalists recently, whose newsletter and daily posts are must reads. And here's Derek Van Orden, taking a shot at him because of Well, let me back up. Dan Schaefer took a position against the statewide referendum questions tomorrow for the state constitution. Derek Van Orden puts a quote unquote reporter telling people how they vote. Your elitist, condescending attitude toward regular Americans is why your rag is going out of business. Well, he doesn't have a rag. He has a newsletter. He has a digital outlet on here. And this is what we get for leadership, including up in your neck of the woods with Tom Tiffany, who could be leaders on agricultural and immigration reform and just live to spew the right-wing talking points.
It's just disturbing that, I mean, it's sickening when you hear stuff like that, isn't it? I mean,
it is.
This is supposed to be somebody that is supposed to represent the people of his district. And for him to be in this mind space where anybody who thinks differently than he does gets this vitriol, whether you're a teenager or whether you're a journalist, this man has been put into office by the people of this district. Every step is disturbing. And I don't know how to respond to garbage.
It just seems it seems like the guy who was already a negative person prone to outbursts. It just feels like he's seriously regressed in the past month or two after trying initially during his term in office to try to somehow be, statesman-like, be a bit more moderate, watch your temper a bit. And it looks like he's just decided to throw that out and, just go full-blown MAGA and see where that gets him. And look, it's going to get him votes in many parts of Wisconsin, but
it's hard to fake your way forever.
Yeah.
And he was trying to fake his way for the first month or whatever amount of time it was. And the real person is always going to come through.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. It could be somebody in our position on the radio. It could be somebody in politics. It could be anything. You can't fake your way through life. And we're seeing the real Derek Van Orden. And frankly, again, it comes to the point where this stuff leaks through. It allows people to show their worst selves in a much easier way. I mean, again, it's election day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught the story yesterday where Mayor Rosenberg put out that a family member received this just piece of garbage message. Somebody pretending they're from the Green Bay Police Department and also getting in and just, I mean, Oh, I mean,
No, I had not heard that. I was traveling yesterday.
well,
So
all right.
that sounds just
A
despicable.
family member of the mayor received a threatening message from somebody pretending to be the Green Bay Police Department. But the thing was, a police department would never put out, it's bleep your Jew family. You're lucky we don't drag you out and hang you for what you've done to
Oh my
Wausau.
God.
I mean, unbelievable. So it's people like Derek Van Orden, it's people like Tom Tiffany, it's people like Donald Trump, it's people like Robin Voss who don't push back hard enough either. I mean, you can be a little bit nice. I mean, Robin Voss will put out a face that's a little more friendly, but in the end, these people don't stand up against hatred, and this is what happens. And it makes me livid.
That's exactly what it is that they rely on this violent rhetoric, violent imagery. You know, the post that Trump shared of President Biden looking to be bound and gagged in the back of a truck or something. Again, between that and the things he said about the daughter of a judge in one of his cases, if we continue coddling this, we are just going to continue down this path toward even more violence and more violent rhetoric, and it's going to chase good people away from running for office. And we should not tolerate that any further at all.
Absolutely. But again, even beyond the fact that we're running good people from running for office, we are opening up Pandora's box for evil because of these people. I mean, truly evil. And anybody who says it doesn't matter who is either president or congressman or mayor or city council, it matters beyond the meat and potatoes aspect of the job. It goes back to one of the points in this mayor's race about being aspirational. That was an early point where the alderperson Denny said maybe that the mayor was too aspirational at times. Well, I think we need to have people that are aspirational, that want to bring the best out of us, as opposed to just and frankly, sometimes it sounds like, well, we don't want the mayor talking about this because some people get uncomfortable. Well, sometimes people need to be a little more uncomfortable so they don't put out garbage like we're reading this morning that are being sent to members of the family of the mayor of Wausau.
Yeah, could not agree more. Is that it is long past time to call this kind of garbage out, and and essentially name and shame. There's no other way. And yeah, at times they may be proud of it, going, hey, look, I got some attention for this. But eventually it builds to the point that they understand they do not have the people behind them. And, that's why I'm thankful that we've got shows like yours. Chad's show is on Bull Falls Radio, weekday mornings from 8 to 10. Thank you for the visit, sir. Have a wonderful show. Talk again soon.
You too, Pat. Thank you.
Hey, Greg, try to have fun at the game today, okay?
Pat, I'm certainly going to have a good time. Let me tell you that much.
It's home opener day, everybody. Everybody's very happy about this. So hopefully all goes well for the Brewers taking on the Twins this afternoon. All right, thanks so much for being a part of our program today on Up North News Radio. Have a wonderful Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 6.